Welcome back to the show. I'm Dan Edwards with the Eastside Real Estate Team, and you're listening to Seattle's Eastside Real Estate Team podcast. All right, we are here with Daniel Curry, and Daniel Curry. Oh, I should actually bring him back on the show. Boop, there he is.
Hey, how you
Daniel,
doing?
how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on. So we're going to talk about why now is still a great time to buy. I alluded to it in my Real Talk segment, and I thought we'll have a good conversation about that. Talk to me a little bit before we get into this, because I like to ask this question because this is a show about the ins and outs of real estate. I want to step into the world where real estate is your home, right? Not just a physical asset or an investment. Tell me about the first home or the home you grew up in.
So the home I grew up in was about a 2,000 square foot house in Mukilteo, right on the border of Mukilteo and Linwood. When I was growing up, there was 30 acres that surrounded the property. And it was great to have, dirt bikes and all the fun stuff of it playing out in the woods as a young kid. But recently, in the last probably 5 or 6 years, they knocked down that acreage and put up, I think, 45 homes.
Wow.
In this small area. So driving back through my old neighborhood, nothing looks the same anymore. I mean, my house is still standing, but the house is even a different color now. So
it's like progress, right? It's kind of disappointing.
it is.
So Mukilteo, what did you guys go play in the fields in the summertime? What did you guys do?
Oh yeah, like I said, a lot of dirt bike through the trails and the pasture that was there. It was actually the backside of an old pony farm that had been decommissioned, so there was plenty of trails to go run around in, build forts, playing cops and robbers and throwing sticks at each other, and boys will be
Throwing
boys.
sticks at each other. I hear a catch. All right, cool. So that's the point of home ownership, right? It's about having a place where you can call your own, relax, enjoy your time away from your work life, maybe raise a family, all of those things. And then secondarily, it's your biggest investment. So I just think I'd like to talk a little bit more of the personal side. So why is now the best time to buy a house, Daniel?
So right now, what we're seeing is kind of an interesting dynamic that's breaking out. You have interest rates that have started to fall. Here was it a week ago? We had interest rates drop by almost a full percentage point in a day, which was just something that nobody really saw coming. But you have that end of things, and then you also have homes sitting on the market a little bit longer than they were, say, 6 months or a year ago, where people are starting to offer the seller concessions. There's better prices. There's more negotiating room, things of that nature. And right now you have kind of the perfect storm of the best time to buy. Granted, interest rates are somewhat elevated compared to the last year or two that we got used to seeing through COVID. But if you look back over the last 10, 15, 20 years, interest rates are significantly lower than they were even 5, 10 years ago. The big thing to remember is that there's so much equity that's in the market right now and that can be continue to be built, with home appreciation throughout the next 3 to 5 years, that the one thing I can fix is interest rate. When interest rates come back down, we can go in and refinance the house, restructure from a 30 to a 15-year loan, things of that nature to help save you some money. But what I can't fix is the equity that's lost in waiting. So take advantage of the lower price points now, the seller concessions, and then we can worry about the interest rates at a later date.
Yeah, Daniel, I think that's something that's missed oftentimes when we talk about crashes, ups and downs, is equity lost, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those
Absolutely.
individuals that are renting, they can't get that rental money back in any way,
Exactly.
shape, or form. When you pay a mortgage, you're paying interest. There's a credit on your tax return, and you're paying a slight bit of principal at the beginning. But it is like a forced savings plan, and you can't go back in time and retroactively take that rent that you were paying somebody else and get anything for it.
Unfortunately,
So a bubble, not a bubble, crash, not a crash. Why is there no bubble from your perspective?
You kind of touched on this earlier in the show, and that was supply and demand. I mean, when you go back to when the bubble happened back in 06, and even the years preceding that, you look at the amount of supply, the amount of demand, and then you take it a step further and actually understand that what caused that was the illicit lending practices that have now been made illegal, if you will. There was a lot of loans back then that were done with no income verification. Debt to income ratio wasn't really even a thing. The qualifications back then was basically if you had a pulse and could make a signature. It was really a dangerous way to do lending at that time. And since then, we've restructured the lending side of things to bring in debt to income ratios, verified assets, verified 2-year history of working. And things have kind of tightened up to where the loans that are being drawn up now are so much more secure than they once were. So that side of things has kind of been removed from it. But then you still have the supply and demand issue, like you were saying. You only have a couple months of supply that's currently still available in the market. And without going on a big long tangent, if you go back 35 years ago, you're going to see a population boom that really rivals the baby boomer generation. And what we found is in the last couple of years is the average age of somebody to purchase their first home is roughly 33 years of age. So as far as demand goes, we're going to continue to see demand really, really weigh down on the supply chain, on the supply of homes.
Okay. So I agree. The bottom line is people want a place. I mean, we learned that in the pandemic. So what kind of prediction are you seeing for the next, well, let's just give me the next 6 months.
The next 6 months, I think that, and it's kind of an unpopular opinion, but I really think what we're going to see is the data that the Feds have been raising interest rates according to try to get inflation under control. I think we're going to see that data show that they've already reached where they need to be at, or are right on the tipping point of getting inflation to start coming down. And when we see that, when inflation comes down, interest rates come down. So what I'm thinking is over the next 6 months, we're going to see interest rates come down. Some people are calling for interest rates as low as 4.5%, 5%. I think it's going to take us a little bit longer than the next 6 months to get to that area, but we should definitely see some relief in the next 6 months. And when that happens, everybody that's spent the last year or 6 months at least on the sidelines waiting for homes or waiting for interest rates to drop are going to jump back in the market. When that happens, I worry that we're going to see another feeding frenzy, kind of like we did over the last year, where you're going to have, people bidding over asking price, waiving every contingency there is out there, and offers, in the teens or the 20s on a single home.
So Daniel, you think that will happen if we drop down to 5% again?
I think it will.
Wow.
I think that there's enough people that realize that 2% and 3% interest rates, while they were great to have during the pandemic, we're not going to see those interest rates again. The Fed's not going to reduce the Fed interest rate to 0 again. There's just no reason for it.
And so where are rates today?
Rates today are roughly about 6.25 or so.
Okay, 6.25.
Depending on product. I mean, there's some variation there, but
yeah, I think the interesting thing that we're seeing too is our inventory is doing a seasonal adjustment, right? So we're actually coming down on inventory, or it's still not the same as our inventory last year at this time. Thank goodness, because quite frankly, we need to have a fair amount of inventory so people can do that. So, I do not see us doing that ever again in the next 10 to 15 years, because that just was ridiculous. I can tell you on the East Side in December of last year, 92 homes across the East Side available for sale. That is not a sustainable number to ever get to. Not. So yeah, I think we're just going to kind of bounce around. And quite frankly, yes, I would say if somebody saw, so here could be this, I'm just kind of spitballing here, but here could be a really good scenario for a prepared buyer. Is you're fully underwritten, ready to go, and you're hanging out, you're talking to Daniel, you're making sure all your stuff is current. In our market next year, you get out there, you're looking at stuff, suddenly interest rates drop below 6, and you have a house that's maybe been on the market for a while, and now you can actually get a credit and get a rate buy down to below 5%.
Right.
That
we are currently offering the 3-2-1 buy down. So instead of doing just 2 years of that lower interest rate or 2% lower on the interest rate, we actually have an option to go to a third if the math makes sense.
Yeah,
So
if the credit is enough. And
if the
do you
credit's
happen to
enough,
know,
correct.
is that about 4 points for something like that?
It's right around 3.5 to 4 points, depending on the size of the loan.
Okay, yeah. So again, this would be a scenario where we haven't seen this before, but the seller is actually, instead of reducing the price, is actually crediting 4 percentage points of your loan so that you can get a better cost for your money. And Daniel knows this, and I just want our listeners to know this, that essentially you have to qualify for the one interest rate. So if current rates are 6.125, you qualify at 6.125, but you're paying, what is it? That would be
3.125 in that
for the
case.
first year,
Yep.
et cetera, et cetera. So,
and the cool thing with that program is that money goes into an escrow account. So what happens is the balance that's in there after each payment comes out, it doesn't just go away like a permanent buy down. It goes in an escrow account, and if, say, in a year from now interest rates fall to 4.5% and you want to lock in that 4.5% interest rate, we can refinance you, and whatever's left over in that account goes towards a principal reduction.
oh, nice.
So it's really a sweet program for
I didn't even
everybody.
think about that.
More money in everybody's pocket.
I didn't really think about that. That's awesome. All right. Well, hey, I don't want to. We've got a lot of other questions, but I don't think we have time for all of them. Why don't we talk about why to work with you and a local lender, Daniel?
So local lenders bring a whole nother aspect and dynamic to the lending experience. And the first thing I point out with people is a lot of your local lenders we're direct lenders with Freddie and Fannie and everybody else. So there's no, we're all kind of dealing with similar rates, as opposed to some of these call centers that are in the Midwest that are the .coms, if you will. And what you have with that is you have somebody that is paid typically hourly as opposed to commissioned. And whether your loan closes with them or not, they get paid. For us, just like with your realtor, if that deal doesn't go through, your loan doesn't get paid, you're not satisfied, and ultimately we don't end up getting paid. So the amount of care that a local lender puts on your loan and on your buying experience is incredibly better than you would have with some of these .coms that may offer a little bit cheaper interest rates.
Yeah.
Additionally,
just a shout out. I'm sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
That's okay. Additionally, we are familiar with the area. We're familiar with the local landscape of what people are doing in this market, and able to set you up with realtors in your market.
Yeah, and I have to say that there are tons of internet, farms that do financing. Some, mortgages. Some do a good job. But I would say this: that the most important thing is that you have somebody you can call any time of the day, and not only that your real estate agent can get a hold of.
Absolutely.
The places like Rhymes with Rocket Mortgage, you never know when you can reach the folks. So,
right.
I just highly encourage you to consider. So, Daniel, how do people get a hold of you?
You can either give me a call at 425-239-0788 or send me an email at daniel.curry@guildmortgage.net. Available anytime for you.
All right. Yeah, I appreciate you taking the time to come on. Thank you so much. We hope to have you back.
Definitely. I'd love to. I appreciate you having me on there, and look forward to listening to the end of the podcast.
All right. Very good. Well, after this short break, we're going to welcome in Dan Gelhay from Eastside Insurance Services. Come join. Don't go away. We'll be right back.